Hello everyone, welcome to Changing the Questions, the wrestling podcast where we break down one specific question and then devote a handful of time to that. I am Paul Laporte, joining me is my partner in crime, Mike Miner.
Hello, hello.
And the question that we are going to ask today is one that is very important, very near and dear to my heart, and one that I think needs to be answered, and that is, Mr. Miner, how can you save the Divas Revolution? You specifically. It's all on you. It's all on you.
Wow.
It's all up to you.
That's a lot of pressure.
Women's wrestling lives or dies by you, sir, so I hope your answer's good.
I am a big believer in women, and I'm sure they can do a great job themselves, but it's a matter of letting them do their thing in the ring and letting them perform. You know, it's not rocket science. You let them go out there, do their thing. I mean, you can look at WWE. You can look at the match the other day with Paige and Charlotte. It wasn't as good as it could have been. It was a solid match. But it didn't feel like the emotion was there for somebody, or two women that actually should have been tearing each other's heads off. Think of it this way. You have Paige tearing Charlotte down over her deceased brother, Reed. They should have been killing each other in that ring. They should have been out ringside, you know, throwing each other around, but it really didn't happen. What's your take on it?
Alright, well, I don't want to get too much into the specifics of that particular match. I do agree. Although it definitely seemed like...
But that's a highlight right there.
Well, it definitely seemed like they were trying to backpedal on the Reed thing, like, almost instantly after it was done. Like, they didn't mention it in the highlight video, they didn't mention it at all during the actual show.
But if it's going to be done, you may as well go through with it.
Well, they didn't have any, they had the balls to do it, but not the balls to live with the consequences. Here's why I think that the Divas Revolution needs saving is because I think it started all wrong.
Definitely, and I wanted to mention that as well.
Right.
But
so
why don't you take it?
Okay, so take a look at where the Divas Revolution was essentially birthed, and that was in NXT. Stephanie McMahon did not show up on an episode of NXT and go, "Hey guys, women's wrestling's important now." And then everybody was like, "Yay!" And we all started caring about women's wrestling. That's not what happened. What happened is that you just had women's wrestlers, Paige, Emma, Summer Rae at the time, just show up and just wrestle and work hard. And Natalya Neidhart was down there, and then they did the tournament for the first NXT Women's title. They didn't name it the NXT Divas title. They named it the NXT Women's title.
Let's give props to Bayley at least. I mean, the evolution of Bayley, man.
Well, no, absolutely. Bayley was there, but she came along. She came along a little in with Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch and Charlotte in there. So I think that WWE, the main roster, needed to do a similar thing where they didn't, like I said, they had Stephanie come out, and it was great to have, Sasha and Paige and Charlotte all come up, although they should have been together as a group and not split them up. And that was the thing, it's like, well, we're going to split everybody into these three little teams, and all the wrestling matches we're going to have are just going to be kind of interchangeable members of groups instead of individual people having these matches. Like Becky Lynch was a completely different person from Charlotte on NXT, but if you go to the main roster, like, what are their differences? What's their difference?
What makes it different?
So that's the thing, is they should have just had, okay, here are these new people, we're going to have this wrestling division, and of course you're going to want to rename your title and get a whole new title. Bring back the original, or not the original one that they had, but bring back the one that they had from the mid-90s and early 2000s. That belt looked great.
Yeah.
And it has a history behind it, and use that. You could have had Nikki Bella retire as the final Divas champion or whatever.
The Tramps Championship.
Yeah, and then go with, okay, so this is now the WWE Women's Division, and we're gonna really see who the best women's wrestler is, and then off you go, and then continue to build individual characters instead of like these groups.
But if you want my thought on it, I think they were just putting them in groups to just kind of keep them, keep them on TV, and to keep that championship on Nikki Bella to break AJ Lee's record. I think that's basically what it came down to.
Yeah,
it really isn't hard to see. They could say no, that wasn't the case. But come on, let's be real. You have three groups of three women going at it week to week. Nikki Bella not defending that championship, and then right around 301 days, AJ had, 295, if I'm not mistaken? Something like that.
It was the week after.
And right after she broke that record, they drop it. She drops it, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, the group starts splitting apart between Paige, Charlotte, and Becky.
I mean, what they really could have done, pointless. What they should have done at that point is like, okay, have Nikki Bella be your frickin' longest reigning goddamn Divas champion or whatever. Then, when Charlotte won that belt from her, they should have pulled a Shane Douglas and said, oh, look at this Divas belt that has a lineage with such great champions like Maurice Oulet and Michelle McCool, and those friggin' women can kiss my ass and throw that thing away, and then pull out the women's title and be like, this is the fabulous Moolah and friggin' Trish Stratus and Lita. This is what this belt represents, and this is the belt I'm going to wear. And then carried on the women's division that way. That would have been a good way to bookend it. You give Nikki the record, you close that chapter, you move on to the next one. And I'm crossing my fingers and just hoping that if they actually remember that Sasha Banks fucking works there and actually, give her a run towards that belt, that if and when Sasha Banks gets that belt, that she does that. You still have the opportunity to do that, but they haven't kind of gone with it, and I don't know why, because they love branding their women as divas, and I know that the men are superstars and the women are divas or whatever.
Sasha Banks is the diva, if you want me to be honest with you. I mean, wrestler and diva, if you want to.
Right, well, that's her character, obviously, but she also hates that title with a passion.
It's just, if you're going to have anybody hold on to that moniker of diva, she might hate it, but you know what? She's the perfect example of what a diva should be, I think, as far as the attitude goes, and as far as a wrestler goes, she's a perfect example of a wrestler, a female wrestler at that. She is a perfect combination of both worlds. You don't get that often.
Yeah, I
get one or the other.
I still think if you're going to change the perception that women's wrestling has with that main roster,
absolutely.
You're going to have to change that name.
Women's wrestling. It should be the Women's Championship. Absolutely.
There's just too many negative connotations associated with that belt, and that belt is fucking hideous.
It's horrendous.
So that needs to be changed. Like I said, bring back the old belt, design a new one, whatever. I mean, the NXT women's belt is beautiful. It looks, and it's pink. It's got the pink jewels in it, whatever. But it's still subtle. Feminine, it's friggin' gorgeous. It looks like an actual championship belt. I think it's nicer than the men's NXT belt, which is just a big ass X, basically.
It's an obnoxious championship.
But it looks really nice. They need to do something similar with that, or I've said before they'll never do this, but I would love to see
females like butterflies. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, I would love to see them just pull the women from NXT and the women from the main roster, give them their own show at Full Sail, and have it be like WWE Women's, and do a weekly show for that. But they'll never do that.
Well, I mean, that's what SmackDown originally was supposed to be years ago. You knew that, right?
That was supposed to be a women's show?
It was supposed to be a women's show.
I think I sort of kind of remember hearing about that.
Going to book that as a women's show, weekly women's show. That's the kind of momentum they had back in the day, but I don't know, for whatever reason, they nixed it, and we got the format that we got today still.
It seems like that's happened a few different times in wrestling history, where, when Aja Kong came in the mid-90s, and they were like, oh, we're going to push, women's wrestling, we're going to sign Aja, and this is going to be a big deal, and then Aja, breaks some girl's nose, and the guys on the roster are like, no, this is too rough, they don't want to see this, and then they basically talk the office out of booking women.
What was it, Survivor Series 95, I think it was?
Where Aja eliminated everybody by herself.
20 years ago, and Aja, she dominated, and man, that's as close to Japanese women's wrestling, Joshi, as you're gonna get for that company, and it was 20 years ago.
Well, no, I would disagree.
They've had great wrestling.
I honestly,
Trish Stratus, Lita, they've had,
See, I would disagree, and I would say that even despite the fact that there's one Japanese women's wrestler in there now, but the NXT women's division is closer to Joshi in a lot, and in certain cases,
I can agree with
has surpassed it. I think it's surpassed modern Joshi. Probably hasn't surpassed Joshi from the early to mid 90s. I still think that Joshi, the All Japan Women's, is the best wrestling that's ever existed, and that's the thing. I think WWE needs to realize that women's wrestling can be as good or better than men's wrestling, and NXT has shown it time and time again.
What's funny about it is that they have the stories to go with it. They've got the talent to go with it. It all mixes well in NXT, but for some reason, it's lost in translation on the main roster. What's the deal? Why does this happen? They're completely capable of making things happen to draw people in to watch. Do you think it's a mistake that once it started catching on through the hashtag, give Divas a chance, or whatever it was, and it started with AJ, do you think it's a coincidence that once it picked up steam that, they wound up saying, okay, we got to do this? Well, they couldn't ignore it.
They couldn't ignore it, but then they also didn't know what to do with it. They're like, well, give Divas a chance, but the writers on the main roster are just like, how? I don't know. And they're like, okay, well, we'll give them longer matches, and okay, that's good. That's a decent start, I guess. But if the matches don't mean anything and they're between characters who nobody has any reason to be invested in, like I said, if you never watched an episode of NXT in your life and you see Charlotte, what's Charlotte's character? What's her motivations? She's Ric Flair's daughter, and
she's got the figure eight. It's twice as nice.
Yeah. What's Becky Lynch's motivation? She's Charlotte's friend, and, what's Naomi's motivation? And Naomi's been there like 10 years almost. Like, what's her motivation? Like, where does she play in all of this? What does Sasha play in all this? You go down to the NXT roster, and it's like, okay, well, what's Asuka? Okay, Asuka is a woman who came over from Japan. She's here to prove herself in NXT. She got involved with two mean girls in Emma and Dana Brooke, and now she's out to murder them both. What is Bayley's motivation? Well, she started off as a little fangirl who was just happy to be there, but then has slowly evolved into this champion who is just going to be a badass and run over everybody. What is Alexa Bliss's motivation? Similarly, she came in as this bubbly, happy girl. She realized that that's not the way that you get to the top in this division. She aligned herself with a weird Australian guy and a cowboy, and now she wears pants that are 3 sizes too small and steals the belt and takes a photo opportunity with it and then puts it down and runs away. I can give you like stories for all of these characters and like what their motivations are. Like Bliss wants the belt because she wants to prove that people like Bayley don't deserve it. Bayley wants the belt because she wants to be a good example for girls. Asuka wants the belt because she wants to be the best goddamn women's wrestler in the world, even though she has other business to take care of in the meantime. Emma wants the belt because she feels cheated because she feels she started this whole thing and doesn't get any credit for it. Like, there's so many motivations down there that you can go to, but you go up to the main roster, and some of these women who've been here going on 10 years, you would say, like, what are they doing, and why do they want to do it? And you go, blah.
You know what? If I can make a bold prediction now, at least in Sasha's case, I can see it going the way of The Rock back in 97-98 with the Nation of Domination. He's the breakout star of that whole group. I think Sasha is going to be the breakout of that group.
Yeah, but they gotta put her on fucking TV first.
And that's the thing.
Like, they have to give her TV time. But they didn't have Rock join the Nation.
You know it's going to go that far. She's going to be the breakout star of that group, but they need her on television.
Yeah.
And you can see it. It's starting already, but it's...
They didn't have The Rock join the Nation of Domination, and then I kept him off TV for a month.
Exactly.
And then, when he comes back, he's on TV for 5 minutes, and he's not in a title picture, and nobody cares about him.
It's frustrating, because you know it can happen, and you know it's supposed to go that way, but why fight it? There's no point to fighting it. Just keep it going. Even if you let it, go slowly. Take your time with it.
Yeah. I think... Just kind of
ones, I don't know.
I think just kind of wrapping this whole thing up, I think that the quote-unquote Divas Revolution... Revolution? Well, I think their New Year's resolution for the Divas Revolution should be to just kind of soft reboot the whole thing, break up these teams, get back to the point of, hey, here's this title. Hey, all these girls want this title. Hey, why do they want this title? And go from there. And then that's your starting point.
I'm going to make a quick point. Did you see Mick Foley's recent comments?
On
Facebook, Twitter, wherever it was.
I believe so,
He made some comments about possibly becoming a former fan because of incidents like what happened recently, as far as the Divas division goes and the way things are going. And it's very unfortunate that a huge name Hall of Famer is going to become a former fan because, he goes to see these women 6 months ago, put on one of the matches of their lifetime, our lifetimes, and then you see them on television this past Monday, and it's kind of just there.
And that's the most interesting point to all of this, is whether or not WWE is going to find their footing before all of the goodwill they generated from this incredible division in NXT before all those people get bored and wander away.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't bottom out.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Let us know what you think. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on YouTube, then leave us a comment in the comments below. If you want to send us any suggestions for any future questions, you can do that in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Scorcho, SCORCHO. If you have any other amounts of praise and or hate, be sure to send those along. Hope you guys are enjoying this, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.